Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. So as Jessica mentioned, we're going to talk about extending your paid search campaign. And first and foremost, I'm going to go through a little bit about the automotive advertising forecast, so just so we can give some context to why we're talking about all of this. And then Dena and I will both talk about optimizing your paid search content and campaign with respect to what's going on with automotive. So first and foremost, I think this is really interesting, and it's probably not going to be anything that's super surprising for anyone in this room. But this year, millennials, which are the age demographic of 18 to 34, which is a pretty broad age gap, they're actually going to surpass the baby boomer generation as the largest living generation. So I think that is really important for everyone in this room to understand, because there's a lot of buzz about millennials, right? And how to market to the millennials, how to retain the millennials as employees. So a lot of interesting things are coming out in relation to the millennials. And they're making up a quarter of the adult population, but actually they're going to account for about half of the automotive sales in 2015. So that purchasing power of the millennial is really important for automotive. And then 87% of these millennials actually claim that their smartphone never leaves their side. So how many in this room actually sleep with their smartphone? Raise of hands. So pretty significant percentage even outside of millennials that use it as their alarm clock. It never leaves their side. Well, 87% of the millennials say it's never leaving their side, which I think is really interesting, right? So they're that attached to this phone. And 90% of the millennials actually, they're going to expect that customer service experience to be seamless. And this means from the service, across all service channels and across all devices. So if the consumer or the millennial is starting with searching on their mobile device, and then they've submitted an inquiry to your dealership, they're going to expect really prompt response. And then they're going to expect that when they go to the dealership that you already know about that conversation that was had. And so it's just, they're expecting this whole channel and this whole process to be absolutely seamless. And if you think about the biggest and the best brands, for example, like Amazon and Apple, their customer service experience is 100% seamless. And that's the reason that they're so successful. So when you think about digital marketing and how you can impact your digital marketing plan into 2016, think about making it a seamless process and how you can do that with your mobile website, how you can do that with your lead response times, how you can do that in your service department. So think about all the different ways that you can make that experience seamless for the consumer. So wanted to give visibility. We subscribe to, it's called the Burrell Study, and basically what they do is they project what's going to happen in terms of automotive ad spending for new cars. And this is a question that we always get. How much do I spend on digital? What's the right amount? And based on this study, 57% of the budget for new car ad spending is going to digital. So that's surpassing traditional, with, again, 57% of the new car ad budget going towards digital. So does everyone, who in this room feels like that's a pretty reasonable number and falls in line with your budget? Raise of hands, really quick. Who thinks that that's way out of whack, they spend a lot more? Raise of hands. Not very many. And who spends a lot less than 57%? Okay, so it seemed like most people feel like that number, the 57%, is in line. And this is saying that the average per vehicle sold amount is $522 for new car ad spending. So really nice benchmark data for you guys all to take back with you and just kind of say, does this feel right? Does what I'm spending on digital feel right? Some other trends in the automotive marketplace are that mobile and search are absolutely crucial in the path to purchase. We know that mobile's been talked about for a long time here. 48% of all searches are now coming from mobile devices, 48%. And 1 in 3 auto shoppers is going to perform a mobile action while physically on your lot. So I know that this is often seen, is that the consumer, they're coming on your lot, they're looking at a car, and guess what? They're doing a quick search to see if they can get that car for less expensive somewhere else. This is happening all the time. And then 52% of car buyers see search engines as the most important source of vehicle information. So if we're thinking about consumers thinking that search engines are really important and relevant, we're thinking that the consumers on the lot cross-shopping, that would basically lead me to say, if I'm a dealership, I'm going to go back and make sure I have a really good search presence on mobile, because if the consumer is doing this, I better make sure my impression share, the amount that I'm spending on mobile, is maximized, and I better make sure my message looks really solid from a search perspective. How do I get that consumer to click when they're cross-shopping? So this is just always mind-boggling to me, but Google receives over 3.5 billion searches a day. That's just amazing in terms of the pure quantity of it. And they're saying that 15 to 20% of these searches are still completely unique, meaning that they've never actually seen these searches before. So it's good to know, because it's really important to make sure you've gotten your campaign set up for success, to make sure you're capturing all those unique searches. And this actually really speaks to your mobile strategy as well. So for instance, how many of you have an Android or iPhone and you talk into it when you want to search? You talk to Siri, you talk to somebody else, or you talk to the Android version of Siri, and you ask it a question, right? Well, that's one of the biggest reasons that these searches are unique, right? Because we're all asking questions to the search engines in our own way. So your paid search campaign has to be set up properly to capture all of those varying searches. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And mobile searches are exceeding desktop searches in 10 countries, including the US. So definitely, we know, we've talked about it for a while now, that mobile is on the rise. Well, mobile has officially surpassed that of desktop. So really important to note, just to make sure you have your mobile strategy in place. So with all of that said, I'm going to pass it over to Dena to talk a little bit about our lives online.
Thanks, Nicole. So one thing is, being actually a person who fits into that millennial category, I can definitely speak to, we don't go online, we live online. And it's completely true. And I would be willing to bet that most of the people in this room kind of fit into this category, because we're using our smartphones so much and so often. So the average person actually interacts with their smartphone over 150 times per day. And when you think about all those interaction points, they're actually opportunities for advertisers to interact with you in a lot of those instances. So this gives you an example of, you wake up and you check the weather on your phone, you check your calendar for the day, you check, variety of social media sites, you're using your Maps feature to get directions, you're using all these different features of your smartphone to interact with you along your day. So as a consumer, those are all things that you're looking for, and as an advertiser, a lot of those are opportunities to influence that consumer. And it goes to show you that near me searches are on the rise. So customers, as Nicole said, are talking into their phones and looking for things that are near them, around them. So words like near me, closest, nearby, they're increasingly common and becoming a big part of the queries that Google is seeing every day. And so near me searches have actually increased 34 times since 2011 and nearly doubled since last year. And obviously the vast majority of those are coming from mobile devices. So that's one thing to consider, that with your paid search campaign, it's important that you have those near me, closest, nearby searches or keywords actually included in your campaign so that you're picking up on those search queries. Some statistics for you: 20%, there's been a 20% increase in mobile online sessions. There's been an 18% decrease in time spent per visit. And there's been a 29% increase in mobile conversion rates. So when you think about these three statistics as a process, it really makes a lot of sense. There's a 20% increase in mobile online sessions. So all of these consumers are now using their mobile devices to get their answers. So increases in online sessions are going to go up. And then what you find is those millennials, they want their answers right away. So there's a decrease in time spent per visit. They're looking for their information and they're looking for it right away. And then if they're finding their information, they're going to convert. So a 29% increase in mobile conversion rates. So as long as you have that process figured out, this is the ideal process for a millennial or for really anyone on their smartphone. You want to find the information, you want to be able to consume it quickly, and then you want to get what you're looking for. 82% of smartphone users turn to a search engine when looking for a local business. Total common sense. Where else would you look? I mean, if you can't think of one other good place off the top of your head, it makes sense because the search engine is going to give you what you're looking for. 66% of smartphone users turn to their mobile phones to learn more about something they've seen in a television commercial. Anyone who was in the last presentation, he talked about that, and I think it's so true. It's important to make sure that what you're advertising is also what customers will find if they're interacting with you on their smartphone, on their tablet, on their computer, because a lot of people are having that same experience where they're hearing something on the television, and what do you most often end your commercials with? Your website address. So if the customer is doing what you're hoping that they'll do, it's important to make sure that that process is also the same and the consumer's seeing the same information. So I'm going to turn it back over to Nicole, and basically what we just told you is a lot of ways that the industry is changing and how search behavior is changing because of the millennials. Well, now we want to tell you a little bit about what you should do to prepare for that.
Thanks, Dena. So we're going to jump into how to extend your paid search campaign. So this is the real meat of the presentation in terms of giving you tips that you can take with you and take back to talk to either your paid search vendor or actually do yourself if you're doing your paid search on your own, or just evaluate your paid search vendor. Are they doing these things? So just making sure to give you guys the latest and greatest on how to optimize and make sure your campaign's working for you. So first and foremost, we'll talk about Google's quality score. It's something that definitely has been around for a long time, but we'll talk about what that is and what it means to you. We'll talk about the 5 strategic ad extensions that we suggest that are really important to making sure the consumer clicks on your ad and you get that visit. We'll talk about dynamic search ads. It's a new feature within Google that you can definitely take advantage of that has seen some really good results. And then lastly and most importantly, talking about cost per lead or cost per acquisition, however you want to frame it, but how do I get the most leads out of my paid search campaign? So strategy to how you can maximize that. So first and foremost, why quality score is important. So quality score and making changes to it can positively impact your volume of traffic, your lead quality, and your revenue. And the reason being is that quality scores is what it sounds like, is how relevant is your ad to the search query that was just performed. Google actually gives you a ranking, so to speak, on how relevant your ad is and how relevant that whole user experience it is. And basically, the concept being that if you improve that quality score, if you make it better, you're going to, number one, increase the likelihood that your ad will actually enter the auction, so that you'll get that impression that you'll see your ad. So if you'll get more impressions, you'll be seen more often. And then the second thing is it's going to reduce your cost per click. So if we're able to effectively work on your quality score, we can get the cost per click to go down. It will also help improve your overall ad position. So that's obviously where you're showing up on the page. So all of those things are relevant for quality score. So how that works is your ad rank equals your max cost per click bid times your quality score. So for instance, if we have a word like Toyota Camry Lexington, and we're in Lexington, right? And we have relevant content on our page with Camrys in Lexington, right? We have a relevant ad that talks about Toyota Camrys in Lexington. If we have all of those good experiences and that's the keyword that was searched, we would have a good quality score, right? And so higher quality score means that we can maybe lower our CPC and get the same ad rank. Or higher quality score and the same CPC that we've had means that our ad will go up. So either way, it's a really beneficial thing because ad going up on the page actually leads to better performance, and reduced cost per click leads to better performance. So it's all about how do we get more out of our campaign. So I know that was a little bit complicated. I didn't mean to introduce a lot of math stuff going on right now, but so we'll talk about 7 critical factors of quality score. First is the ad's expected click-through rate. So this is basically how is the ad historically performed? So are people clicking on this ad? Is it a relevant ad for the search that was performed, right? And then the display ad's historical click-through rate. So the display URL is the URL that we're showing underneath the ad. So is that relevant? Has that received a high click? And then the landing page quality. So are we sending that user to a really good landing page that's relevant to the search? So the example that I just gave, the Toyota Camry example, ideally I'm going to send it to the Toyota Camry inventory, and that's the basic concept behind sending it to the right landing page, is that the keyword should match the ad and the landing page. And then that's the next one, the keyword/ad relevance. That means, did I serve up the right ad copy for the search that was done? Did I serve an ad that said Toyota Camry Lexington? Because that was the search. And then geographic performance, historical geographic performance. So this is a really important one that you can kind of all look at when you go back to your dealerships, is what are my radius settings, and how does my click-through rate look for those different radius settings? So for service, am I targeting the right radius? For sales, am I targeting the right radius? Am I going in the right region? Am I being too broad with that focus? Because that impacts quality score. And then the ads historical performance on the site. This is a really important one, actually, because there's a lot of misconceptions on having your own AdWords campaign and taking that with you, because the quality score follows the AdWords campaign. It actually doesn't. It follows the URL. So for instance, the reason that Google did this is because back in the day, people used to create URLs all of the time, and they would just, they would create a not so great site, start an AdWords campaign, send a bunch of traffic to the site that wasn't good. Google would say, well, you don't get a very high quality score. You're not relevant to our users. And they would kind of, say it's not great. Well, then these same businesses would just start a new AdWords account thinking that they could trick Google. And Google got smart and they said, no, that's the same URL. You did something bad with this URL before. You're going to do the same thing over here. So that's why your quality score stays with your URL. And that's really important. Fun fact to take with you. And then lastly, performance by targeted device. So how does your ad perform on mobile devices? Are consumers clicking on your ads on mobile? Are they clicking on it on tablet? Or are they clicking on it on desktop? So a couple facts about quality score. And how you can impact it, we kind of went through this, so we won't go through some of the examples that I gave, but A/B testing with ad copy is really important. Some of the things that we've found with ad copy are similar to the same traditional things that you're used to. So if you're running a traditional ad, usually you talk about price and selection, because we know that the consumer wants to see that they can see a lot of inventory and it's going to be priced effectively, right? And so the same premise really follows suit with your pay-per-click ads. So make sure you're talking about those things. Talk about pricing, talk about selection. Make sure to put that out there for the consumer. And then A/B test different verbiage. And that's really how you can improve quality score, because that high click-through rate, customers clicking on your ad shows relevancy. And then send traffic to the most relevant page on the site. So we talked about that. Avoid too many keywords in an ad group. This is really important because a lot of what you don't want to do is just add every single keyword that you can possibly imagine into an ad group. If we want variations of Toyota Camry, we can use different match types to make sure that we get all of those different searches. And that's the way you want to go, as opposed to just adding a bunch of keywords. Avoid general or underperforming keywords. So overly general keywords are sometimes not so great for paid search, because they're going to have higher costs and maybe lower click-through rate. So you want to avoid overly general keywords. You want to try and be as specific as you can possibly be. And next, have definitely an extensive negative keyword list. So what we do is thinking about terms that you do not want to show up for. So for instance, if you have a Honda dealership, we don't want to show up when the consumer does searches for Honda motorcycles if you're selling Honda cars. So that's just a basic example about negative keywords. We want to make sure we don't show up for that. We also might want to show up when people search for t-shirts or racing terms or different things like that. You also want to make sure that you're keeping those geo settings reasonable. And I gave this example on the previous slide, but for service, if your customer is only traveling about 5 miles for your service department, use that type of radius for your PPC campaign on service. If your customer is traveling further for used car sales, maybe you can do a bit wider of a radius for used cars. And then lastly, and this is a really important, easy one to implement, is how utilize the strategic ad extensions. And we'll dive into each of these so you guys know what they are. But these are really easy ones to implement, and things that you can turn on tomorrow or make sure that your PPC vendor has on. And these can definitely improve quality score because the consumer definitely sees these and they make the ad stand out. So we'll go into those next.
Thanks, Nicole. So as Nicole said, strategic ad extensions are extremely important, and they can actually impact your click-through rate in a pretty big way. So sometimes just implementing some of these ad extensions can actually boost your click-through rate. And when you break down the ad extensions, it does make sense because you're giving the consumer an easy way to get what they're looking for. So a quick overview, and we'll go through each one, are call extensions, site links, call out extensions, location extensions, and review extensions. So call extensions is probably the most important. And I often hear from a lot of people, oh, I never click on those pay-per-click ads. You know, why would I do pay-per-click? Because I never click on those ads. I see them and don't click on them. Well, the matter of fact and truth is that 70% of people have called from the mobile search results using the ads, and there are 218 billion mobile minutes per month using these call extensions. So that's a huge opportunity if you're not currently utilizing them, which I'm guessing if you're running a pay-per-click campaign, a lot are. But call extensions are extremely important, and it gives the customer the ability to call you directly from your ad.
And equally as important is making sure that that your quality score for mobile looks good so that you can appear within those first 2 spots for this. Because as you can see right there, Google limits how many paid search ads they show up there. So that has a direct correlation with quality score and your bidding amount. So are you bidding right to make sure you show up there? And do you have a good quality score for that campaign? So both of those things are really important because at the end of the day, these call extensions, what we've heard from dealers is that phone calls are our most valuable leads, and these drive phone calls. So this is the most crucial part of getting your PPC campaign right.
The next is site links. So it hyperlinks to a specific part of your website. So if you notice, the reason that this can increase click-through rate is pretty fundamental. So if I'm searching for Ford Dealer Lexington and this ad comes up here, and I searched Ford Dealer Lexington, but I'm actually the most interested in looking at that dealer's new Ford specials. If you see the site link extension that's showing there are 4 of them. One of them is new Ford specials. So even though my search took me to an ad that's a little bit more generic, I have the ability to click right on new Ford specials, which is what I'm looking to find, and it's going to give me the ability to get what I need quicker. The next is call out extensions. So call out extensions are actually one of the newer extensions that are available to you, and it allows you to add a unique selling proposition into your ad. So it's not a clickable extension like some of the other ones that we talked about. It's actually an additional line of text that you can add to your ad copy, and Google will decide when it is served, but it gives you the ability to add an additional line that tells someone why they would come to your dealership. So here in this example, it's whatever it takes, meaning that dealer will do whatever it takes to get your business, and non-commissioned sales staff. That's something that they're doing already. It's not something they're just adding for this campaign. This particular dealership has a non-commissioned sales staff. So they're putting it into their ad copy to show in a variety of different settings where it's enticing the customer to click on the ad.
Yeah, and these, as Dena mentioned, the call-out extensions are relatively new. And so this is one that your PPC campaign might not have in it. So definitely check that one out because we can directly see an increase in CTR due to having those call-out extensions in place. And it's just an additional line to take up of real estate on the page. So that's the other concept behind these, is how much real estate can your ad take up? Having the site links, having the call extension, having these call out extensions. It's just, let's take up more real estate so we can push everyone down and we can just really try and own that page.
And if you're trying to identify if someone's running these or not, if you do a search, these call out extensions will often appear in a lighter shade of gray compared to the rest of the text, and they're typically separated by a dot. There's sometimes 2, most often 3 different call outs there. Location extension actually adds your physical address, which gives the customer the ability to go directly to the Maps feature, either on their phone or on their computer, and get directions to your dealership. So it's again another great way for a customer to be able to quickly, do a search for a Ford dealer near me, your ad appears and they can get directions to your store. You do have to have a Google My Business page to use this tool. If you do not have one of those set up already, it's a great idea anyways because it helps for SEO and a lot of other great things. So if you do not have a Google My Business page, you'll definitely want to get one of those set up. And then you have the ability to connect it to your AdWords campaign, which then allows you to add these location extensions.
And just one quick note on the location ad extensions. The other benefit to that is because mobile search is on the rise, and people are utilizing their mobile device to find everything that they want and need at that exact time. If you're utilizing this extension and the call extension, that's a great customer experience to show that phone call option and the location option, because they might have done all their research and interacted with you already, but you know what, they didn't get the address to the dealership and they just did a quick search. You want to make sure you're capitalizing on that seamless experience that we talked about earlier and make sure it's real easy for them to get to your dealership.
And last but not least, this is a little bit of an underutilized extension. It's called a review ad extension. So this is where you're given the opportunity to show awards or third-party reviews for your dealership. And this isn't an opportunity to show Yelp or Google reviews from consumers, but actual third-party awards that you've won. So an example here is that this dealer has an A+ accredited business from the Better Business Bureau. So this actually would show up in your ad, and if a customer chose to click on this, it would take them to the website where that is featured, but it would not cost you. So it does improve your click-through rate and your credibility, but you're not paying when they go to that review extension. You're only paying if they click to go to your website. So another example is if you are recognized by some of the review sites like DealerRater, you have a recognition status with them that you've earned, like a Dealer of Excellence or whatever they call it. You can actually feature that on there as long as it's prominent on a website. So it's a great way to improve your click-through rate. Sometimes just having that there gives the consumer a little bit of
just gives that credibility.
Yeah, it gives them a little credibility, reassurance that that's what they're looking for. Okay, advanced tactic that we're going to discuss is dynamic search ads. Dynamic search ads are relatively new, not extremely new, but it is an opportunity for you to utilize something that not everyone is doing. And so basically what it is it's a campaign in your AdWords account that does not have any keywords. And the campaign is based on the content of the dealership's website. The landing page and what the consumer is searching for actually generate the headline of the ad. So for example, if I search for Ford dealer Lexington and that particular dealership has a landing page on their website that talks about how they're a Ford dealer near Lexington, the headline of that dynamic search ad may be Ford dealer located near Lexington. So it's actually matching what the customer is looking for to the most relevant website and landing page and then generating the ad headline. So it's kind of like cutting out the middleman and giving the customer what they're looking for, which has really been kind of a theme in our presentation, is get the customer what they're looking for in the most efficient and effective way. So using dynamic search ads is just one example of that. And we talked a lot about quality score. These campaigns tend to have a high quality score because what your website is featuring is matching what the customer is searching for, and so the ad is extremely relevant because it's based off of that. So you tend to be able to achieve a little bit lower cost per click here because your relevance is nice and high and your quality score is good. Using cost per lead and impression share. So cost per lead is a term that I'm sure all of you have heard of and you're very aware of, and a lot of different partners will define that in a different way. But for the sake of this conversation, let's think of a lead as either a phone call or a form submission. An impression share is the share of market that you have based on what you're eligible to have. So market share is a similar word to impression share, but impression share is the terminology used by Google AdWords.
And really quickly, the concept behind impression share is how often, I like to simplify it as how often am I showing up on Google in my targeted radius? So what percentage of the time are my ads showing up?
So to go a little bit into how you can use that for you, I have an example here of a campaign that has an account that has 3 different campaigns, and they're a little bit hard to see. Actually. So the first is a branded campaign. So that's the dealership's name, terms that surround the dealership's name. They have a competitor campaign for competing Honda dealerships, a new Honda campaign, which is going to have all of their Honda models in there, and a regional campaign, which is going to be Honda dealer Lexington, Honda dealer Louisville. And so what we're doing here is looking at the cost per lead and the impression share in conjunction. So where did we find the lowest cost per lead? We found the lowest cost per lead in the branded campaign. Then we look at impression share and we see that they have a 75% impression share. If we were able to raise that impression share to 85 or 90%, they would be able to achieve more leads at that nice low price point of $14.37. So if you look at where most of your impression share is, it should align with where you're getting the lowest cost per lead. And actually, L2T Media has built our proprietary software to do this for us. So it's constantly looking at cost per lead and impression share in conjunction to determine where can we spend more money to help the customer get the lowest possible cost per lead. And that's a great way to look at return on investment, because if you're getting more leads for the same big cost, you're getting the best ROI possible.
So we talked a little bit about all of the different tactics with site links and whatnot. We want to just kind of summarize overall what we spoke about here today. So first and foremost, we know that millennials are impacting the search behavior. We talked a lot about that, which is leading to increased search, and it's also leading to increased mobile activity. So no doubt that these millennials are really important to what we're doing here. Secondly, is your dealership ready? That's the biggest thing. Is your dealership ready for this increase in mobile search? Are they ready for that seamless customer experience? Are they ready to deliver that for the millennial generation, because they have tremendous buying power? And lastly, you have the opportunity to do all of this and earn your fair share of that search, this increased search, by making sure your quality score of your PPC campaign is great, and then make sure that you're optimizing that campaign for the best performance, meaning how do we get the best cost per lead in our PPC campaign. So if we're doing those things, we will, as a dealership, get better search results, which will in turn really target that millennial generation that's so important. So that's all that we have here today. So we'll open it up to some Q&A. Yes. We'll go. Yeah.
What are the repercussions of doing that, or is it better to start, maybe change or start a different campaign, or what do you recommend?
We actually look at our keywords very, very often and add and remove keywords that are not performing well. So if you're grouping your keywords together in ad groups that are compact enough, then you can look at them on that granular level. So say, for example, you have a Honda CR-V ad group, and you look at the search queries that were pulled from that ad group, you can see the searches that people typed in to trigger one of your ads, and sometimes you'll find missed opportunities for something that customers were typing in that you want to add as a keyword, and sometimes you'll find keyword or search queries that maybe you don't want your ads to show up for, so in that case you could put those as negative. And we do pause a lot of not performing keywords. So if you you can actually look at the quality score for each individual keyword. And if you're seeing a quality score that's 2 or 3, sometimes even 4, and it's not a totally essential keyword, definitely pause it.
Yeah, so rather than change it, I think it would be to add, remove, and then look at the match types too. So a lot of different scenarios for probably unique situations, but we can definitely talk afterwards too. I think you had a question as well.
Yeah, you had said that the ranking stays with the URL.
Uh-huh.
Is that the entire URL string, or is it just the domain name?
It's the domain. It's the main domain, so the root domain. Yeah, which is a great clarification point. So yeah, the quality score stays with the root domain, so toyotaofanywhere.com. That particular domain, the quality score would remain with. Great question. Yes?
How then would it be determined if you really have no control over the quality score of keywords?
Yeah, so the question was behind dynamic search ads. And dynamic search ads are the advanced tactic that we talked about earlier. And the question was, just to make sure everyone heard, was how do you determine really how that all works if you have no control over quality score, et cetera? And the real answer is that it really isn't a lot in Google's hands. in terms of how those campaigns run. You can set parameters though, and negative out some things. So you can't do some things to make sure it's a better performer for you and make sure you're maximizing it. So we've definitely noticed that you have to tweak those campaigns to get the maximum performance out of them. If you give too much free rein, it'll take it and run with it, which doesn't end up, and the biggest way to determine if you're getting good quality traffic from those dynamic search campaigns is looking at the analytics on what happens post-click. So did they stay on the site a long time? Did they bounce? Did they, what do those analytics look like? Because that will help support whatever, whether it's a good campaign for you or not. Great question. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I guess my just generic concern would be about bidding.
You can still set a max bid.
Okay, that was fine.
Yeah, you can still set a max bid. You're just not really doing as much tweaking for performance. You're kind of letting that
You're letting
take care
Google,
of itself.
yeah.
But yeah, you can still set a max bid.
If it's performing, they would have a natural proclivity to increase spend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also take a look at, you're right, but you can also take a look at the search queries. And if you notice a lot of overlap from campaigns that you already have set up, you can apply those as negatives to your dynamic campaign to be sure that that's really capturing what you want it to instead of just stealing from some of your other campaigns.
Yes. We all set?
Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Okay.
So if we could just promote the fact that you guys are going to be at your booth.
Great. Yep.
We'd love to take questions over there. If you could, look at your agenda and decide where you want to be at 4:20. Because we'll start promptly at 4:20 with the next session. We are now on break. We've got beverages and snacks outside. And we'll get going here. If you could give it up for Nicole.
Great. Thank you, guys.